Hey guys, today I'm doing another asset store review and I'm looking at MudBun. This looks like it could be a really nice one. It has a lot of good reviews. It's currently rated at 5 stars and it's currently on sale as well. So let's see if it's worth it for you guys to get. I've got the new project set up with MudBun imported already from the asset store. So I'm going to go and have a look at the examples. So that's in MudBun, down into examples, built-in RP, and I'm going to look at each one of these examples. So the first one is called 2D and 3D spin puff comparison, and I really like the look of this one. This looks like a old school Roadrunner type thing. My Unity is a bit slow sometimes these days. So if I press play here, you can see what that looks like. There's a 3D version and a 2D version. And they both look really good. Okay, I'm going to stop that and go into the next one. The next one is called 2D Sci-Fi Grid. And that's what they've got like a little blob setup. So this is made from primitives called spheres, which blend into each other. And you see how it's interacting with that grid over there. It's quite a nice effect. So from what I can tell, MudBun is used mostly, and it's in the title and in the description on the asset store, it says VFX, okay? So I expect it to be used mostly for special effects. You can see here this nice little ripple effect that it's got going. Not a fan of that orange, but it has a really nice effect. So let's have a look at the others. I'm not going to go into too much detail here. I'm just going to show you guys what it actually looks like, because that's really what this is about. Like I said, special effects. It's got an auto rigging feature, so you can possibly make some very nice animations like they've got here. The first one on the left there does not have the auto rigging feature set up, but the second one does. I tried checking out what it looks like in edit mode. It doesn't look like it has any effect in edit mode, as you can see there, but only when you press play. I know when I tested this out on my own after playing around with this demo, I got it to actually work in edit mode. So I don't know why that was a bit different here in this setup. But I can say that, you know, it's very easy to set this stuff up and start playing around with it. As you can see on the left here, there's not too many game objects set up, so there's just a few of them. There's just a few rules that you need to keep in mind. So you can see here, this shows off some of the modeling capabilities and different rendering modes. So you can see the first one is not so detailed. The second one's using something called sphere or circle rendering mode. And the last one is blocks. I think I got my terminology a bit wrong there, but you guys can have a look at it. It's very easy to set up. This here is actually using meshes to generate that smoke from that circle from the sphere bouncing up and down. It's not your standard particle system. And here is an example showing complex objects that can be generated using something called brush groups. So you can set up different primitives and have them interact in different ways, so that brush group will have complex objects act as one object. And here is a smoke effect. And you can see I've got my wireframe enabled here. And you can see that is actually using a mesh generated instead of your standard particle system. It actually uses the particle system behind the scenes. How it works exactly, I'm not 100% sure, but yeah. This decal thing, I wasn't able to see what's happening here, so I don't know. If someone can have a look at it and let me know what's this meant to be exactly. I know the decal effect is meant to basically flatten out that image and have it act as a decal, but I don't see that at play here. Or maybe I'm just missing something. I really don't see anything. So let's see, fireball. This fireball effect was quite nice as well. Also using, well, look, this whole asset is basically built around using meshes and mesh deformation at runtime. And it's not just at runtime, mind you. You can generate some really complex meshes and model them and bake them so that you get better performance out of it. And I quite like the look of this. Very funky kind of thing. Okay, so that's a fireball one. They've got a flame thing, which a simple kind of candle-like flame going here. Blue one. Liquid particles. Oh, this is quite a nice one. So you see there, even in edit mode, you see there's a nice effect going. So when I press play, you can really see the real effect. Looks a bit metallic at the moment, but it looks better when you press play. So yeah, let me actually go ahead and press play here. See what that looks like. So I wonder if it's possible to make something like a where is my water type thing with using this here. But you can see the performance is quite bad. That's like brought me down to 240 frames a second for something like this. Usually on a bit of an empty scene I get 1000 frames a second. So you can see that really took it down. This next one, meshing mode comparison, is similar to what I showed you guys earlier. Just different rendering modes basically. Okay. Oh, this noise curve is a nice one. I really like this. So this uses Perler noise, and I think there's other noise generation algorithms they've got going. But this is a dynamic one, so they've got some animation going here, and you can see when they interact with each other how funky that looks. It's just really cool with so few game objects in your hierarchy to get something so complicated. And this here uses curves, so I'm just going to drag the one across. And it's got 3 points, so if you've ever used curves, this will look quite familiar to you. So I'm just adjusting a few of them, and you can see the curve that's generated, and you can play around with it and modify it and write scripts for this thing. So, which is what they use in this example. So they've got a little simple script set up for that. This onion block is quite a nice one. The example unfortunately is not so great here. You can basically cut away portions of the mesh and have it generate layers. So this example just doesn't show that in good enough detail. I think this needs to be updated to show that, you know, it can actually generate some layers within layers within layers using this onion modifier. Pinched sphere is the next one I'm looking at, which is a simple, straightforward one. No real explanation needed here. Next one, quantized cube. Oh, this was quite a funky looking one. I don't know what they mean by quantized. I didn't even bother looking it up, but you can see what's generated here. It's like a nice noise type algorithm again for part of that cube that's spinning around there. Very cool. So if anyone's ever played with Clayxels, you'll know that this is very similar to Clayxels, but I think this has more features than Clayxels and seems to be a bit more performant as well. Quantized flow. Okay, you'll see this is also a very nice effect. Here you will see the frame rate is very low. That's 200 frames a second for something, for a very simple scene. So obviously a lot going on behind here, a lot of math to compute this. So this is something you'll use quite sparingly. Let's see what's next. Render mode and material comparison. Okay, so here you can see how you can change the actual rendering modes. It's the exact same thing with different level of detail set up for each of these little meshes. This next one is just a plain straightforward modeling example. It's like a Mickey Mouse type end that they've set up here. You can see if I rotate that a bit, change it just to shaded, it looks a bit better. I think I'm just going to turn off gizmos here to see it a bit better. I think I forgot to actually change that. Sorry about that, but you can turn off gizmos to see that a bit better without. This last one, that last example is exactly like the first one, so seems to be a bit of a duplication there. This next one is very nice. So this is called Twister, and they've got some nice animations going on here. It looks like it's spinning around like a goo type substance. And if you have a look at the scripts on these objects, you'll see they're actually quite straightforward. And I'm going to play around with that for a bit. Yeah, I'm going to do some basic testing. I created a new scene, and you can right click on MudBun primitives, and I chose a sphere. Just zooming in on that a bit, changing the color. You can see it's quite easy to change the color there. These are not shared materials that's created. So I'm going to create another primitive here, and I've got the wrong thing. I keep going to 3D object. I should go to MudBun and primitive types, and then I chose a torus, which is a little donut shape. And you can see I'm just dragging it along there. You can see a bit of blending going on, but you'll see there's that blend value if you, and this works upwards. So if you choose the top one, and that's the top one in the hierarchy, nothing happens. And I chose the bottom one and then change the blend value, and you can see it actually have an effect now. Okay, so yeah, I'm just changing the color a bit to blue, and I'm going to change that torus color to yellow. Yeah, I'm just testing out the blending of the colors there, but the colors don't really blend all that well. In other words, it doesn't mix the colors together. And you can see it fades into each other. I was expecting it to be a bit green in the center there for mixing that blue and yellow together. Yeah, I'm playing around with some of the other operators. So this here again is similar to Clayxels. So it's got that subtract operator where the shape of the second object subtracts or removes the shape on the left, or the shape above it in the hierarchy. The second one is intersect, which basically will only display the intersection of that. I tried to press play there to just show you what that looks like, but doesn't matter. This next one is nice. This die operator is you can see it just leaves the color behind. Okay, this next one is cull inside and cull outside. I think it was just easier to show the cull outside first, which is what I'm in for. You can see the cull inside is the opposite of that. It just subtracts on the outside. And then the last operator is the null operator, which I'm going to show you in a bit. Still playing around with that color inside. Okay, so last one is no up, which is useful when you are just moving stuff around without wanting to have an effect. Okay, so I changed it back to union and just moving that around a bit. The next thing I want to test out is this auto rigging feature. So what I'm doing is I added in a new sphere. I selected no up because I don't want it affecting the other objects there. And I've got count as bone selected, which is quite important there. So in order to get that working and test it out, I locked the mesh, which prevents the scripts from running at runtime. And here I'm just kind of messing around, seeing if I can figure out how this works. So I'm unlocking the mesh again, and what you need to do here is you need to change it to mesh renderer and select auto rigging in order for the bone functionality to work, and there you can see it working. Okay, I don't have that set up in the best location there, but you can see what happens as I'm moving that last sphere around, which is invisible. It's actually better to use this first one, and here you can see exactly how this works. So the objects stay attached to each other in that first one. If you're familiar with something like Blender, then this will make a lot more sense. So this is actually like useful for simple modeling. Obviously it's not going to replace Blender altogether, but you can see how that can be useful to someone who's not used to a modeling software, or doesn't want to really get involved in learning something like Blender. Not all of us want to do that. The next thing I want to look at is this noise effect. So you go to MudBun effects and noise volume, and this creates nice kind of random mesh generation little box that you can resize, and you can see what that does. So this here is called the algorithm is called Perlin noise, and I think they've got different algorithms as well for generating the noise here. And it's basically if you, and I'm sure you guys are all familiar with Minecraft, but this is what Minecraft uses to generate its landscapes. Okay, obviously not like this, but you'll see in a bit what I'm talking about. Yeah, I'm just adjusting the detail a bit to let's change it to shaded wireframe, and you can see here as I increase it, obviously there's a lower limit and upper limit, so you have to just play around with that. So you see, if you go too low, it disappears. If you go too high, it disappears as well. But you can see the mesh changing form there and getting more detailed. And as you move that along, you can see how cool that is. So wherever you are in space, it will always be the same. So if I move that all the way to the right and bring it back, it's going to be exactly the same as what it is now. Okay, so it's not completely randomly generated, it's pseudo-random. Okay, as is most random generation functions actually. Okay, so I changed it to procedural, and I didn't notice that actually changing anything, so I need to check what that's like. Oh, so here I changed the render mode, and here you can see this actually looks like a Minecraft landscape. If you guys ever played around with generating something like this by yourself, you'll know that it's actually quite complicated. So to have something like this that can just generate it for you on the fly is so cool. I mean, for this feature alone, I think is worth the actual purchase price. So you can see there's different noise generation algorithms, and yeah, I think that just looks so cool. But yeah, with this is voxel based, so although this all looks like cubes, it's actually one giant mesh instead of a million different cubes that's being generated there, which is exactly the same as how Minecraft works as well. And that is for performance reasons. Okay, then the next thing is we going to MudBun primitives, effects, no, distortion and twist. This here is a very cool thing. So I'm going to add in a primitive here. Let's just add in a box. Scale that up a bit. I think you have to scale it in order to see the actual effect. So you can see there, like if you scale it too much, then it just distorts a bit. So you have to change the densities. You see there, voxel density, that's the setting. And then you can scale it up a bit more. Okay, so I'm changing the radius, just playing around and figuring out how this works. I think I've got that scaled up a bit too much. So there we go. So I scaled it down on the Z-axis. And then you can see the exact effect. So that distorts it quite nicely, and it adds a little twist in. And of course you can play with some of the settings there. There's that blend which is not going to work, but you want that radius. I had the wrong thing selected here. You actually want that twist. And if you change the radius, you can see how that has an effect. And the angle is just changing it up and down there from flat to twist, and you can see that can actually make quite a nice spiral there. So very, very cool. You can see the possibilities with this thing is just off the charts. I think this is just truly amazing, guys. And the cool thing is you can, like, you know, generate some really cool looking landscapes, or like, you know, if you're doing a 2.5D platformer type game, this is just gonna take your stuff to the next level. Okay, so I created this script, and you can see there I created a public float value for the angle, imported that MudBun namespace, and what I'm going to do is get this to run in play mode, to just ping pong between a flat surface and a twisted one. So I'm going to have to look up that mud twist script, which is on that object, that primitive, And that ping pong function is going to ping pong between 0 and whatever that angle is I've got set there. And I'm setting a variable there for the speed, because if we just use that time to time, it's very slow. Okay, so I'm gonna add it onto that mud twist thing. I called mine Twister, not the most creative name ever. So the angle, it's going to range from 0 to 70. I removed my camera at some point. I think I was using Unity Chan to test something out, which I'm going to add in again in a bit. Just repositioning the camera there. Camera selected, Control Shift F. And the white really gets on my nerves, so I'm changing the color. And cool. You can see that script is working fine. It's just going a bit faster, so I'm changing that down to what, maybe 50. Awesome. That looks so good. It looks really cool. Okay, so there's that collider generation script that will allow your collider to update during runtime, that you need to just add onto the mud renderer, the top level. And you can see there the collider is being updated. Cool. So next thing to do, I'm going to add in a plane to test this thing out, just for a floor, before I add my Unity Chan, because I don't want her falling right through. First I tried adding in a box and that didn't quite work out too well. I think there was some serious performance issues here. Let's just see what I did. Okay, you can see that noise. So when I press play here, you'll see that does not look good. The frame rate really dropped down. So, okay, firstly, I think I thought it was just a voxel detail that was causing it. But I can see I actually changed the wrong setting there. Okay, so I removed that and then just added a plane in afterwards. And that's going to be my floor. Just resize that a bit. Create a material. Make that red. Drag it on there. Oh, that looks ugly. I made it a bit darker, which looks better. Red and blue just does not look good together. The primary colors don't go well together. I'll change that to a bit of an orangey thing I ended up with, I think. Yeah, that looks a lot better. Okay, cool. So it's not as slow as it was. I tried deploying this to mobile, to my phone, and it did not work at all. It just, my phone just, it crashed completely. So I had to kill the whole process to get my phone working again. I downloaded Unity Chan, which you can get from the asset store, and I'm adding in that dynamic locomotion and the camera. And cool. I'm just testing out the collider here, so you can see if I move to the edge, it falls down, and that moves shoves her out of the way if I fall down onto that edge as it's moving. Do that again. You can see she's moving. So that is very cool. Can see a lot of potential for this, but obviously you have to use this sparingly because of performance issues. One thing you can do is enable and disable this these objects by distance, which is something I use quite often in games. So it's only when your player comes into close proximity do you enable these things to enable like something that's really high performance intensive to just be enabled during that point in time when your player comes close to them. The next thing I'm going to do is take this thing, that twister, and rotate it on its x-axis by 90 and create a little bridge out of it. And let's see what this looks like when you press play. So, okay, I've got my model there, which I'm just rotating to face because I'm tired of spinning her around every time I press play. And you'll see, oh, that looks so cool. So this is so cool for like a little infinite runner type game, I guess. Something that moves up and down. Imagine adding a level on top of that, which I think I'm going to do. Okay, so I'm just gonna add in a cube over here. Move it up, resize it, and I'm just gonna align it there with the top of the bridge. Scale that down, flat, not Z. Y-axis. Let's flatten that a bit. And I align that. It's not perfect, but we're just messing around here. Let's see what that feels like. So, moving up, trying to jump onto the platform, and yeah, cool, that worked. Couldn't see that too well because okay, now I jumped through it. Tried it again. Okay, come on, can make it. Okay, there we go. Okay, I made it to the top. Yeah, that seemed like a bit of fun. You can imagine if you have a whole level set up with some of these moving platforms that curve around, and when combining different objects together with this tool, you can really create some unique looking things. So obviously, just remember performance, and I'm going to say this time and time again, you have to be very careful with performance with something like this. So I think all in all, this was a great asset. The documentation and tutorials are really top notch, and just from the examples alone, you can learn everything you need to know. It's really only for experienced Unity users. I would not recommend this for beginners. And it's there's just so much that you can do with this thing. Very flexible, and just keep an eye out on the performance, and well worth the price, especially now that it is on sale. But even so, I would definitely recommend it, getting it at any point. So guys, do yourself a favor, and if you want something this flexible, have a look at it, and I hope that if you do get it, you create something really cool with it, and yeah, share it with us. I would love to see what you guys come up with. Until next time, guys, enjoy it.